Hi guys, in the previous video we learned how to download SDL library and add it to our project. And as I mentioned before, I use mini-GW set tools that include GCC compiler and GDB debugger to build our C game. If you want to learn about mini-GW and how to download it as well as install it, you can go and watch the video in the description. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to create a game window using SDL library. So without further ado, let's jump in and explain the code. In the previous video, we download SDL library and extract archive folder and copy the bin include and the lib to our project. But for now, we need to create some files. Let's create source file and call it main.c and header file called init.h and another C file which is the implementation of function defined in the init header file, and lastly define header file which will define the macros and include the library needed to our project. For now, let's go and open this file with code editor like Sublime Text. Let's begin with the devs header file. Let's write the include guard, which is the preprocessor directive that prevent the content of the header file from being included more than once in a single compilation unit. To begin by hash if not defined. If not defined, then go and define it without missing the end. If then we need to include the standard input output library, the SDW hash include SDW.h and then we need to include SDL library, then let's define the size of the window by using the hash define screen width and define the height as 720, and let's create new data type using type dev struct and call it up. It take as member an SDL window pointer and call it window, and an SDL render pointer and call it render. Let's jump to the init header file and write the include guard hash if not define init hash h, then go and define it. We need to include the devs header file and next we need to define two functions, the init function which will initialize the SDL subsystems and create our window, and the render and perform other initialization tasks that we'll need in the future video, and the other one is the close function that we'll use to clean up all the resources allocated by SDL in the init function and shut down the SDL subsystems. let's go and define the init function and give it the void, a void return type and the name of init, and it take as parameter nap data type and call it my app, and then the close function. It take like the init function, nap data type pointer, let's go to the init source file and implement our function. Let's begin with the init. Let's include first the init header file, and next we implement our function. We start first by initialize the SDL subsystem by calling the SDL init function. SDL init. Let's go with SDL init video. To learn more about SDL functions, you can go to the SDL website, and under the documentation you go to the wiki. Next you go to index and choose category API, and you can find all the function that will use it in our series. You can go and search for SDL init and you can read what this function do. As he say here, it initialize the SDL library and it take as parameter flag. This flag can be an SDL init timer, audio, video, joystick, and you choose the subsystem you want to use in your program, and it return 0 on success and a negative error code on failure. You can go and call the SDL get error and print the error in the console. Let's come back to our code and test the return value. If the return value is negative, what we'll do is print f and write SDL initialization error. As well, we call the SDL get error function that return the error, and then we need to exit the program with exit failure. And if the initialization go fine, let's go and create our window by calling the SDL create window. And the same, you can go to the category API and search for SDL create window. As you can see here, with this function you can create a window with specific position, dimension and flags. It take as parameter title and the X position, Y position, the width and the height, and some flags, and it return a pointer to an SDL window. And the flags, as you can see here, it can be SDL window full screen and resizable, minimized, etc, etc. And we'll go with this function. Copy it. It take title. Let's give it title of shoot them up. The position can, let's go with SDL position centered. It make our window in the center of the screen, as well as the Y coordinate, and it take the width, screen width, copy and paste, and as high take this high. Lastly, we can use the SDL window shown, and this function, as you can see here, it returns the window that was created or null on failure. Again, you can use SDL get error for print this error to the console. Let's come back. The return of the function will be assigned to my app window that will created in the dev header file. It has a member called window, and the return of the create window function will assign to this member. Next, we need to test the return if we succeed to create the window. Let's go with the if condition and window equal to null. If it's true, let's make the same, copy and paste, window creation failed, and call the SDL get error for more explanation. And before we exit the program, we need to close SDL by call SDL kit function. And if the window is created successfully, let's go and create a render by calling SDL create render, and can go and read about this function. It create 2D rendering context for our window. It take as parameter an SDL window pointer and an index and flags, and it will return the SDL render pointer. It's the same as SDL create window. Let's come back to our program and let's give it the window, then give it the index of -1, and you can choose between flags, render software if you use the CPU, and if you use the GPU you can use SDL render accelerated, but use the hardware acceleration. Let's go with SDL render accelerated. And we need to assign to my app render. Then we need to make our test. Let's copy and call it gain, and here we need to test our render. If the return of the function is null, let's print an error to the console, render creation failed, and call SDL get error, and then let's destroy the window before exit the program by calling SDL destroy destroy window, and give it the window as well. You can give it no, and then exit the SDL subsystem and then exit program lastly, and that's it. The next step is to implement the close function. First we need to destroy the window by calling SDL destroy window function and give it the window as parameter. Then let's assign the window the value of null. Then we need to destroy the render by calling SDL destroy render and give it the render. And the same assign it the value of null. And the last thing to do is to kit the SDL by calling SDL kit. For now, let's go to the main source file. Let's begin by including the init and include the def header file, then the main function. Let's begin by declaring not data type and call it my app. Then by using memset function that reside in string header file, let's go and add it to the def include string .h memset and give it the beginning address and the value to be initialized and the size of memory and then let's go and call the init function and give it the address of my app. Let's call a function called SDL set render draw color, SDL underscore set render draw color, and it take as parameter the render my app render, and then it take, let's go and search for this function, set render draw color. It take as parameter the render and the red value, the green and the blue, and lastly the alpha, which is the transparency. Let's return to our program and give it 96 for the red and 128 for the green and 255 for the blue, and give it 255 for the opacity. Next, let's call SDL render clear the render with this color and give it my app render my app render. And lastly, the most of rendered system is double buffered, and all the function that will called will make modification in the background buffer. And if you want to bring all your work to the display, you call the SDL render present function. Render present function that take as parameter the render, my app and render, and we can give it some delay by calling SDL delay and give it 5 seconds. After that, we need to call the close function to destroy the window and close the SDL, and give it my app address. For now, let's go and execute our program. Go to your console, change directory to your project, copy them and call it, and gcc the compiler, all the source file and output. The output executable file will be in the bin folder. Let's give it a name of prog, and then let's include and lib, and then miniGW32, and then SDL2 main, and then SDL2. Let's go. And this one, and that's it. We now have a fully functioning game window. In the next video, we'll learn how to add a graphic to our window using SDL library. Thanks for watching.